Why would a team ignore the one player? Fans, analysts, and even their own locker room are begging to see. Why is the Cleveland Browns coaching staff refusing to say his name, let alone play him? And more importantly, what are they afraid of? Because this isn't just about quarterback stats or game plans anymore. It's about power. It's about politics. And it's about a rookie quarterback who's forcing the entire NFL to have a conversation the Browns clearly don't want to have. Shadur Sanders hasn't taken a single snap in a regular season NFL game, and yet somehow, he's already the most polarizing figure in Cleveland football. The fans want him. The veterans are whispering about him. The owner said they plan to play him. So why do the Browns seem so dead set on pretending he doesn't exist? This is the story behind that silence and why it may end up being one of the most bizarre quarterback decisions in NFL history. Cleveland fans aren't just frustrated, they're breaking. When a die-hard football city starts talking boycotts, you know the foundation is crumbling. But that's exactly where Browns Nation is right now. The team is 2-7, the offense is flatlining, and the silence from the front office is starting to sound a lot like disrespect. Don't buy tickets. Boycott the games. Black out the stadium until they listen. Those aren't random tweets. That's the collective voice of a fan base that's been screamed over again. And what they're screaming for? It's not just wins. It's honesty. It's answers. It's Shadur Sanders. The Browns haven't simply failed to perform, they've failed to be transparent. And while it's easy to point fingers at injuries, coaching schemes, or the offensive line, none of those explain why the most intriguing quarterback on the roster, possibly the most electric player in the entire building, is being blatantly ignored. Shedeur hasn't just been benched, he's been buried. But it's not like the team has a legitimate star holding him off. Dillon Gabriel, the current starter, has looked overwhelmed and inconsistent. A 58.6% completion rate, a 1-4 record, and zero command over the huddle. He doesn't inspire, he doesn't energize. For most of the fan base, he doesn't even belong under center. And yet, game after game, loss after loss. Shadur Sanders stands on the sideline, fully healthy, fully dressed, never called. The disconnect is staggering. From the fans to the analysts to the veterans in the locker room, no one can understand what's going on. Everyone can see the Browns' offense is stale, predictable, and lifeless. Everyone can feel what's missing, so they look toward the one person who might spark something. The one guy with fire in his veins and ice in his stare. The one dude who walks onto the field like he's already earned the moment. But instead of being handed even a few snaps, Shadur's entrance is being actively blocked. Protected against, dodged, dismissed. And Cleveland fans? They're done being quiet about it. People forget this city has endured more quarterback chaos than almost any fan base in NFL history. From first-round flameouts to broken veterans to journeymen, wildcards, and unnecessary experiments, Browns fans have seen it all. They know what hopelessness looks like. They can smell it from kickoff. So when they start to gather around a fifth-round rookie who hasn't even taken a single regular season snap, you better believe it means something. This isn't a fad, it's desperation mixed with hope. It's chaos, begging for clarity, and it's led to questions the team refuses to answer. What's the harm in letting him compete? Why can't he get one drive? Why is he the only quarterback who hasn't been given a chance? When the coach refuses to say a player's name and fans start to notice you're in dangerous territory, not just competitively, but culturally. There's a growing sense that this goes past football, past depth charts and practice reps, past playbooks. This has nothing to do with being ready, it has to do with being wanted. You've got fans watching Gabriel throw near picks and wobble under pressure, while Sanders, known for his poise and arm strength in college, doesn't even get considered when the Browns are being routed. This isn't normal. And the longer it goes on, the more personal it starts to feel. Is the team really this committed to Dillon Gabriel? Or are they just this afraid of what Shedeur might do if they take him off the leash? Make no mistake, Cleveland is spiraling, the season is gone, the fans are angry, the locker room is restless, but the most dangerous thing swirling in the air right now is momentum. Not on the field, but off it, because every loss makes the franchise look more stubborn. Every Gabriel misfire adds fuel to the fire, and every sideline shot of Shedeur with a helmet on and no plans to play confirms what everyone is already thinking. The Browns aren't just hesitant to play him, they're determined not to. But when it comes to Shadur Sanders, the real story isn't just what the fans are seeing, it's what the team refuses to admit inside the locker room. Inside the Browns locker room, there's a feeling that can't quite be explained, but everybody senses it. It's that quiet moment before something erupts. That feeling like you're sitting on a secret too big to say out loud, and the name behind it is Shadur Sanders. He hasn't thrown a pass in a real NFL game, but ask anyone around the team when he's in the building, something shifts. He's not your average rookie, and players know it. They can feel it. They're not just watching a backup quarterback, they're watching a spark the team refuses to use. There's something real about the it factor, and Shedeur has it in abundance. That undeniable presence. That confidence that doesn't read as arrogance, but rather assurance the kind that can't be faked and usually can't be taught. A few players said it best during a live mic moment. It's like when he steps in the huddle, we lean in. We stop chillin'. We pay attention. You just know. Something's different. Think about how rare that is. In an NFL locker room filled with grown men, with contracts and egos and pride, it's hard to impress anyone just by walking in. But players say when Shadur takes reps, even just in camp or scout team drills, everybody suddenly wants to watch. He's one of those guys. And yet, somehow, the coaching staff treats his presence like a problem to be managed instead of a weapon to be used. Fans ask about it. Media presses on it. Analysts point out the lopsided energy between him and Gabriel, but the Browns stay silent. They don't just avoid the topic, they avoid him. There's no other rookie quarterback in the league surrounded by this much interest and this much resistance at the same time. The Browns act like acknowledging him out loud might trigger some domino they can't afford to fall, but that domino's already wobbling, because every player in that locker room who's seen him operate knows it. He plays fast, decisive, fearless. You can't measure juice in a stat sheet, but everyone on the field can tell who has it and who doesn't. And when Shadur takes the field, sparks fly. One source close to the team said Sanders runs scout team drills with more life than the starting offense. Coaches hush it, media won't quote it, but the whispers inside Berea, they're getting louder. Some veterans already see him as a leader in waiting, not because of his name, but because of how he moves, how he responds to pressure, how he walks into a practice with the same vibe as someone who's 3-0, even when the team's spiraling at 2-7. But that's what makes this whole thing feel less like football politics and more like fear. Because if he steps onto that field and plays well, if he completes a few passes, if he throws a touchdown, then the Browns will face a question they clearly don't want to answer. Why weren't you playing him 6 weeks ago? This isn't just about talent, it's what his success might expose. And that exposure would be brutal. It would call out every decision from sticking with Gabriel, to dismissing fan pressure, to pretending Shedeur wasn't lighting up the practice field in silence. It would prove that what fans were screaming wasn't just emotional noise, it was the most accurate read on the situation the whole time. Think about what it says when even teammates are wondering aloud. We might already have our future QB in the building. They just won't let him play. And here's the kicker. None of this started with Shadur Sanders asking for attention. He never called a press conference. He isn't ranting on social media. He plays scout team, respects the vets, doesn't rock the boat. But just his presence? Just his energy? It shakes the franchise up, and that's exactly why they keep the lid locked. The Browns don't fear what he might do wrong. They fear what he might do right. But if the energy is that obvious in the locker room, you'd expect the coaching staff to notice too, right? Not quite. Because what they're doing in public speaks louder than any silence. At this point, it's not just the fans or the locker room noticing something weird. Even nationally, people have started to ask the same question. Why won't the Cleveland Browns talk about Shadur Sanders? Not why won't they start him? Not why isn't he getting reps? Just why won't they even say his name aloud? It sounds ridiculous until you start watching the pressers really watching them. Over and over, reporters lob softballs to head coach Kevin Stefanski, trying to create easy openings to mention Shadur. And each time, crickets. Instead, Stefanski leans into vague phrases like, "We like our quarterback room," or "Development is a process." But never once does he say the word that every fan is shouting through their screen. Shedeur. It's not just silence, it's avoidance. It's so obvious that Browns content creators started cutting together montages of Stefanski dodging the topic. Fans notice. Local media is getting bolder and pointing it out too. The shadows are being called out publicly, and still, the organization just shrugs. And here's where it gets worse. That silence? It would almost make sense if the alternative was working, but it's not. Since taking over, Dillon Gabriel has posted a near bottom-tier stat line. His last outing? A boring, lifeless performance against a team with a losing record. The offense looks startled, the tempo is off, the confidence? Non-existent. And still, after all this time, not one whisper about letting Shadur Sanders even touch the field in garbage time. It's not strategy anymore. It's not uncertainty, it's intentional. We're seeing something that goes way beyond football play calling. It's suppression. Ask yourself this: if your current QB can't make basic reads, if your locker room is begging for new energy, if the fans have downright turned on the current plan, what does it say when you still refuse to even experiment with the one variable you haven't tried? It becomes personal. And when fans see this happening, they interpret it for what it likely is. They never wanted him to succeed in the first place. It's like the decision to draft him came with one condition: we'll take him, stash him, and make sure he never becomes a distraction. But that clearly backfired. Because now, the distraction isn't that Shedeur wants attention. The distraction is that he hasn't gotten any. The Browns coaching staff had a chance to control this narrative early. They could have brought him in during a blowout, given him a few snaps in preseason, said his name in a basic press conference just to show trust. Instead, they locked the narrative down and hoped it would disappear, but the effect is doing the opposite. The longer they pretend Shadur doesn't exist, the louder his presence becomes. It's classic Streisand effect by refusing to talk about him. They've made him impossible to ignore. And now, the silence has become strategy. Because talking about Shedeur publicly clearly means opening the door, and opening that door leads to questions they don't want to answer. Why did we draft a quarterback we clearly don't believe in? Why is the fifth-round experiment untouchable, but the first-round failure untouchable in the wrong direction? Why does it feel like this team would rather crash and burn with their decision than pivot before the damage becomes permanent? And more importantly, why does it feel like a kid they brought in for depth has already outgrown the script, and they're too scared to rewrite it? If you've followed football long enough, you know when something doesn't add up. This isn't gamesmanship. It's not hiding your hand from opponents. This is the kind of silence that says, "We're too proud to admit we blew it." And every week they double down, it becomes harder to walk it back. Because if Shedeur comes in and shines even just a little, it's over. Every move the coaching staff made up to that point gets reevaluated. Every loss suddenly looks self-inflicted. So the solution? Pretend it's not even a topic. Dodge the name. Back the plan. Protect the investment. Say everything except what everyone already knows. The best chance the Browns have at saving this season is the quarterback they won't even acknowledge. But it's not just awkward silence. There's a reason behind the walls the Browns have built around Sanders, and once you follow the money, it all starts to make sense. To really understand what's happening in Cleveland, you have to let go of logic. Because if you're still asking, why isn't Shadur Sanders playing, you're still thinking like someone who believes NFL teams always reward performance. But inside the walls of pro football, especially in franchises like the Browns, it's not always about who's the most talented. It's about who the staff is emotionally and financially invested in. And in Cleveland, that answer is painfully clear. It's not Shadur Sanders. According to insiders, this situation stopped being about player development a long time ago. From the moment the coaching staff named Dillon Gabriel the starter, despite his fifth-round status and shaky preseason command, the writing was on the wall. Shadur was never in the plan. And why? Because he was never the staff's pick. He was the front office's flyer, a low-risk, high-profile, day 3 selection taken as more of a why not than a he's our guy, a talent too intriguing to ignore, but too risky to fully embrace. And the difference between our guy and a guy in the NFL? Everything. Gabriel got the seat because he fits the mold. Quiet, compliant, risk-tolerant, a player who won't make waves and won't draw attention. He shows up, plays his role, and fades into the system. The coaching staff loves that. Sanders? He's the opposite of invisible. And that scares them. Forget his name, forget his dad, just focus on what he brings. Command, swagger, fire, attention, and attention is the one thing this Browns regime is desperate to avoid, because attention means pressure, attention means expectations, and worst of all, attention means accountability. See, if Shadur plays and thrives, it tumbles the house of cards. It questions why they didn't start him earlier. It magnifies every bad Gabriel outing. It blows a hole in the argument that draft position equals priority. Let's not sugarcoat it, this is all about control. The Browns coaching staff has decided who their development project is, and they're hell-bent on riding with him even if it means going down with the ship. Why? Because pivoting would mean admitting the plan was flawed. And in an NFL building, that's the ultimate sin. No coach wants to admit he backed the wrong guy. No front office wants to be exposed for mismanaging a rookie class. And no veteran quarterback mentor wants to admit the guy getting first-team reps should have been QB2 from the start. But the issue isn't just pride, it's politics. The truth is, every quarterback on the Browns' depth chart carries a business decision around their name. Deshaun Watson, inescapable contract. No real way to bench him without tanking the front office's credibility. Gabriel, hand-picked project. Low expectations keep the pressure off. If he fails quietly, no big scandal. Shadur Sanders, different story entirely. If he succeeds, he blows up every excuse the Browns have built. If you're the front office or the coaching staff, his success could expose your failure. Albert Breer said it plainly. The Browns don't view Shedeur as a core investment. He was a fifth-round pick. They don't have the same stake in him. And that makes it easy to treat him like a placeholder, or worse, a distraction. Every single move being made now is about optics. Play Gabriel. He needs reps. Mention Watson? He's the franchise when healthy. Bury Shedeur? He's developing. Trust the process. But the truth is, the Browns didn't draft him because they believed in him. They drafted him to keep him away from someone else. This was never a trust-based decision. It was a control-based move from day one. And now that the locker room's murmurs are turning into full-blown whispers and the public pressure is reaching boiling, the coaching staff is tripling down on the plan they can no longer justify. Because to even entertain the idea of Sanders starting now, that's an admission. That's waving the white flag and saying, the fans were right, the media was right, the players in the locker room were right, we were wrong. And in this league, some coaches would rather tank a season than take that L on the record. It's not about quarterback competition anymore. It's not even about wins and losses. It's about the pecking order. And right now, that order is rigged to protect reputations, not results. Behind closed doors, not everyone inside the Cleveland Browns organization agrees with what's happening at quarterback. In fact, many don't. You won't hear their quotes at the podium. You won't see it in press releases. But talk to anyone close to the locker room veterans, assistants, even trainers, and a clear pattern begins to emerge. Quietly, this team believes in Shadur Sanders. And not just as a backup, they see something more. Something they know the public hasn't seen yet because the coaching staff won't allow it. And that disconnect? It's quietly dividing the building. While the front office and coaching staff continue to push their preferred narrative, stick to the development plan, Gabriel needs more time, we'll evaluate later, the players aren't buying it anymore. Why? Because they've seen Shedeur behind the scenes. They've watched him dissect coverages during walkthroughs. They've seen him slice up the scout defense in practice, making throws the starting QB wouldn't even attempt. And they know what effort looks like when it's real. One longtime team source put it bluntly. He runs scout team with more energy than our starters show during real games. That's not just praise, that's a warning sign. And the players feel it. The Browns' offense has been flat, underwhelming, and uninspired. But the moment Shedeur steps into any rep, even on the sidelines, something shifts. Helmets straighten, guys lean in, tempo picks up, command returns. It's not about highlight plays, it's not about arm strength or footwork, it's about presence, and Sanders has it in spades. Several veterans speaking off the record have said that Shedeur's energy is contagious, that he's a galvanizing force, that if he were to step in under center, the sideline would feel like a completely different football team. And here's the most important part. They're not saying this because they're fans of his TikTok following or his famous last name. They're saying this because they've struggled on Sundays, and they want to win. It's not personal toward Dylan Gabriel, it's competitive, it's professional. These guys are watching losses pile up while sitting on untapped potential, and they're wondering how long the front office is going to pretend it's not there. Even Myles Garrett, the heartbeat of the defense and one of the most respected voices on the entire roster, has started choosing his words carefully when asked about quarterback play. He keeps the message team-focused. He never makes it about controversy. But read between the lines, and it's easy to see what he's doing. We need momentum, whatever gets us the best chance to win. Sometimes, change lights a fire under everybody. That's not a man defending the current setup. That's a man calling for action without breaking ranks. And Miles isn't alone. Word has spread that in private conversations, multiple key veterans have expressed belief that Shedeur should already be playing, not just being groomed, playing. Even Browns owner Jimmy Haslam has publicly expressed interest in seeing both rookie quarterbacks evaluated before the season ends. Think about that. The owner is in favor of seeing what Sanders can do. But the coaching staff? Dug in, silent, unyielding. Why? Because the moment Shedeur steps on the field, he reorders the power structure. He shifts every conversation, every depth chart, and every future plan. And once he makes that shift, there's no going back. Which means the only thing the coaching staff can do to keep that from happening is nothing. Say nothing. Do nothing. Play keep away. But as the losses mount and the season continues to spiral, the cost of that silence is adding up fast. The locker room can feel it, the veterans especially. This isn't just about trying to make the playoffs anymore, it's about protecting the culture, protecting belief. Because when grown men feel like their effort is being wasted or that leadership is ignoring common sense, locker room trust begins to decay, fast. The coaches are gambling that they can maintain order while ignoring the noise. But this isn't noise anymore. It's strategy, identity, and pride colliding in a building that's slowly starting to crack. And at the center of it all, a rookie quarterback who's done nothing but work, inspire, and wait. He hasn't complained, hasn't turned the media against the staff. He's played it quiet even as the building around him talks louder by the day. The Browns haven't just underestimated Shadur Sanders' talent. They've underestimated his impact, and that may be the fatal mistake that tears this team into pieces. Just when it felt like pressure might finally force the Browns to give Shadur Sanders a shot, boom. Out of nowhere, Deshaun Watson's name reemerges. Not with a timetable, not with warning, just suddenly back in the mix. After being ruled out for weeks with a lingering Achilles injury, still recovering from multiple setbacks, still clearly not himself, the Browns suddenly shift the messaging. Now, reports are floating that Watson might return soon, even as fans and analysts expected him to be shelved for the year. Meanwhile, nothing about Sanders changes. He's still benched. Still silent, still unseen. That's when the light bulb went off for a lot of people watching this franchise closely. This wasn't about Watson coming in to lead the Browns to wins. This wasn't even about him playing well. It was about protecting the system, the hierarchy, the shield they've built around Dillon Gabriel by using Watson, of all people, as a chess piece. Think about the timeline. Fan pressure to play Sanders reaches a fever pitch. Gabriel continues spiraling on the field. Locker room grumbling goes public. And almost on cue, buzz emerges that Deshaun may return early. What's the effect? Simple. If Watson is active again, he becomes QB1. Gabriel becomes QB2. Shedeur? Back to QB3. Crisis avoided. Questions dodged. The one rookie the fans actually want to see, the one who might blow up their carefully laid plans, is instantly pushed off the board. It's a perfect PR smokescreen. Watson doesn't even have to actually play. Just being in the mix freezes the depth chart and freezes Shedeur out of contention. And here's the most telling part. Multiple insiders have reported that Watson's recovery hasn't hit key benchmarks. Some say he's barely able to practice at full speed. Others admit he's nowhere near game ready. So why would the Browns even risk rushing him back? Because it's not about Deshaun. It's about keeping Shedeur myths unverified and unproven. If Shedeur plays, even competes, the dam breaks. Because if he throws one touchdown, looks composed, and lights up the fan base, they lose total control of the storyline. Gabriel gets permanently demoted. Stefanski's decisions become indefensible. The Watson contract goes under a microscope. And suddenly, the spotlight turns toward the one guy they've worked overtime to keep in the dark. That's why Deshaun's return lines up so perfectly, so conveniently, with the rising Sanders conversation. They need a shield. Deshaun was that shield in 2022, and now he's becoming one again. The Browns win either way. If Watson plays poorly, they'll say he's working back from injury. If Gabriel keeps starting, they say it's because we don't want to risk Deshaun. If Shedeur sits, they say nothing at all. It's a well-engineered distraction. Because everyone knows this, Deshaun Watson is not the future. That relationship is over. Once the guaranteed money ends, so does the patience. Everyone inside the building knows it. And even Gabriel? At best, he's a developmental option, someone you keep around for depth while hunting for a true starter with those first-round picks in 2026. But Shadur Sanders? He's a disruptor. Not just on the field, but to the entire organizational structure. And for a franchise like the Browns, one of the most PR-sensitive, legacy-focused, control-obsessed teams in the league, they see that disruption as a threat, not an opportunity. It doesn't matter that Sanders is showing leadership. It doesn't matter that veterans believe in him. It doesn't matter that fans are literally begging for him to play. What matters is that he wasn't their choice. He wasn't supposed to become the face of the franchise. And now, the fear isn't that he'll flop. The fear is that he'll shine. That he'll embarrass the decision-makers without even trying. So instead of giving him the ball, they clutter the path forward with smokescreens and false flags. In other words, if Deshaun is in the conversation, we don't have to answer for Shedeur. And that's all they want: delay, deflection, distance, at all costs. But here's the danger in that strategy: they're running out of time. Fans aren't falling for the deflections. Analysts have connected the dots. And most importantly, the locker room, they're watching. They know when leadership is stalling. They know when something doesn't smell right. And now it's starting to rot from the core. Because no matter how long they stall, no matter how carefully they construct these distractions, you can't silence reality forever. Let's stop pretending this is about football. This was never about reps, never about timing or a developmental plan or protecting a rookie from pressure. That's the company line. That's the easy excuse. But the truth? It's far more uncomfortable. Shadur Sanders is not sitting because he failed to earn trust. He's sitting because he commands too much of it. From the moment he walked into the building, Shedeur stood out not just because of his last name, but because of who he is. Polished, confident, self-assured, socially aware, comfortable in his own skin. And that's exactly what some people inside the Browns organization couldn't handle. In a league obsessed with humble rookies who play their part, keep their heads down, and earn it quietly over time, Shedeur was different. He has a presence. He draws attention without asking. He makes teammates perk up without trying. And whether he says a word or not, he becomes the story. That's where the resistance began. Not with a bad throw, not with an attitude problem. With fear. Fear that a fifth-round pick might outshine a hand-picked project. Fear that a non-traditional quarterback with swagger and followers and cameras might become the face of the franchise overnight. Fear that a kid they didn't ask for might become the guy the fans can't stop cheering for. Because here's the part no coach wants to admit. Shadur Sanders didn't need to beg for spotlight. The spotlight has been there since birth. He didn't ask to be Deion Sanders' son. He didn't ask for millions of followers. He didn't ask to be the quarterback that players gravitated toward in practice. But it happened because that's who he is. And that reality made people in the building incredibly uncomfortable. Because if you're a coach or front office exec in a franchise like Cleveland, a team desperate to avoid controversy, one that still hasn't recovered from the public backlash of the Deshaun Watson saga, the last thing you want is another polarizing figure pushing against your control. Even if that figure is composed, respectful, talented, especially if he is. Because then, if you keep him buried, you look like what you really are: insecure. Not protecting the team, just protecting egos. Ask yourself, isn't it strange that the coaching staff refuses to even experiment with the most exciting rookie quarterback on the roster? Not in garbage time. Not in a mess of a season. Not even with the owner publicly suggesting it. That's not a coaching decision. That's an emotional one. And when you look at how this franchise has treated Shedeur, how they've avoided speaking his name, denied him reps, ignored fan demand, it becomes clear. They didn't accidentally forget about him. They suppressed him on purpose, a player with no scandals, no off-field problems, no public rants. Just smiling in practice, working hard, waiting his turn. And that was still too threatening. Why? Because Shedeur shows up wearing a Rolex, rocking a fitted suit, and backing it all up by making throws in practice that turn heads. Because he's confident in front of the camera. Because he speaks like he expects to succeed, not hopes to one day get lucky. In other words, because he doesn't fit their image of what a rookie should be. So instead of celebrating that rare maturity, they feared it. Instead of empowering him, they minimized him. And when the pressure from fans and players began to grow louder, their response wasn't to reevaluate, it was to double down on silence. To pretend respecting their own plan was more important than responding to reality. But reality has a way of pushing back. And what the Browns didn't count on was that their attempt to keep Shadur Sanders out of the spotlight would only make him larger than life. Every week he sits, his legend grows. Every time Gabriel throws an incompletion, Shedur's value goes up. Every time Stefanski dodges a question, the fanbase grows more convinced something's wrong behind the scenes. At this point, it's not just football failure. It's a masterclass in organizational fear. Because while Shadur has done everything right, they're terrified he might be too right, too focused, too polished, too good. And if that's true, then it's not just a coaching decision to sit him. It's sabotage. By now, the question isn't why the Browns won't play Shadur Sanders. We know why. Fear of his spotlight, fear of upsetting the plan, fear of what his success might reveal about their failures. But quietly, a much darker fear is driving everything behind the curtain. They're terrified that Shedeur isn't just good. They're terrified that he's better than the QBs they handpicked. Because if he steps onto that field and shines, it's over. Every excuse, every scheme, every stubborn post-game quote becomes meaningless. Because then, the truth is undeniable. The Browns had the answer and chose to ignore it. Not by accident, but willfully. Repeatedly, publicly, and at that point, the question becomes far more embarrassing than, why wasn't he playing? It becomes, what else are they getting wrong? The front office knows it. The coaching staff knows it. Even ownership is starting to feel it. Too many people have whispered the same thing now to brush it off. That the Browns made up their mind about Shedeur before the season even started. He wasn't really a candidate to start. Not a legitimate part of the offensive vision. He was brought in as a developmental stash, a fifth-round pick with upside. Sure, but not someone they ever wanted to challenge the hierarchy. Only problem? He did. Not with words. With presence. With practice. With the way veterans began gravitating toward him. With the energy he brought to lifeless walkthroughs. With the way his name kept popping up in team conversations, not because of a media push, but because his teammates felt the difference. And now, the Browns' worst nightmare is becoming reality. They don't just have a talented young quarterback on the roster. They have one they actively refuse to evaluate. Even as fan support has turned into public pressure, even as Gabriel stumbles, even as Watson's career in Cleveland spirals beyond repair. Through all of that, they cling to a plan that's collapsing because changing it would mean acknowledging they were wrong about everything. Wrong about Gabriel being further along. Wrong about treating draft status as football destiny. Wrong about ignoring what their own locker room keeps signaling. That's the core of it. If Shedeur gets a shot now and does anything close to what people suspect he's capable of, it doesn't just make Gabriel irrelevant. It makes the coaches look clueless. And that's a hit many NFL staffs simply refuse to take. Because the politics of being wrong in this league? They're brutal. It means rewrites, job insecurity, national embarrassment. Coaches hate mid-season QB changes because it's the biggest billboard a team can put up that says, "Our plan failed." So even as the evidence continues to mount, even as the season slips away, they're doing what stubborn franchises always do, defending the plan even after it stopped working. Because if they're wrong about Shedeur now, they were wrong about everything leading up to now. And in the NFL, some coaches and GMs would rather lose quietly than win loudly with a player they didn't believe in. But here's the real risk they're taking. Every week Shedeur sits, the doubt in leadership grows. Among players, among media, among fans, even within ownership. Because it starts with one decision, don't play the rookie, but it doesn't end there. It spills into the locker room. It fractures trust. It makes players assume one scoreboard is more important than the one on Sunday. And once that culture starts, you can't unring the bell. What the Browns are doing now isn't coaching. It's containment. They're not developing a team or evaluating talent. They're barricading the future to protect the past. But history doesn't wait forever. And when the curtain finally falls on the 2025 Browns season, all eyes will look back at this bizarre quarterback drama and ask, why? Why didn't they play him? What were they protecting? And how much damage did they do by refusing to just find out? How do you explain passing on a quarterback with real promise just because you were too afraid he might prove you wrong? This may go down as one of the most baffling and self-inflicted quarterback decisions in modern NFL history, not because they failed to develop talent, but because they refused to acknowledge it ever existed in the first place.